JLEWIS III. Everybody calls me Jay. I am a single father strategist, a consultant. I work with single fathers that to help them navigate the single father journey. My specialty is working with single fathers that have become widowers, but I end up working with every gambit of the single fathers. I mean, we are a small group. It's only about 2.5 million of us in America. We are like that old American Express commercial. It's one of those things that says you're an exclusive club. What we need to understand is that exclusive club means that we don't get a lot of help. We don't get outside support. So what we need to do is to figure the best ways that we can work with each other because we speak a certain language that other people don't understand. And it's only people that have gone through the widower's experience that understand it. And then it gets even deeper if you're a widower who has children, because you're facing multiple tsunamis. At the same time, you're still dealing with daily life. So you're hit with a perfect storm, to be honest with you, of three emotionally charged and mentally draining elements. You're working with the fact that you've lost your significant other. Then you're also working with the fact that you are navigating this journey with your children, and they are dealing with their own emotional challenge in relation to the loss of their parent. And then you still have to figure out how to survive on a day-to-day basis as well. You're still going to have to pay the mortgage or the rent, the car note. You're still going to have to do all those things. While you're in the middle of the emotional stagnation, you still have to figure out how to navigate through these things. And it becomes a fine line because science will tell you, hey, take a second. Don't make any rash decisions. And you shouldn't, because you're really not thinking properly. You got brain fog going on, you're dealing with grief. Those things are a challenge. But then also, here's what's interesting. I always tell my clients, the wolves at the door don't care. So you have to figure out a way how to balance the emotional and mental stagnation with an element of creating a logical approach to navigating through this. So I have a 5-step program that I talk to my clients about. And I let them know that the first thing they need to do is to figure out how to calm down. You have to do things differently. Calming down can be anything like observing meditation, exercising, any of those elements. They'll allow you to bring those adrenaline levels down. They'll allow you to utilize your serotonin level, that feel-good hormones, to work to your advantage. The next thing you need to do is create some type of financial plan, because you don't want to be dealing with an issue financially while at the same time you are navigating through the grieving process with the person you lost, while learning how to become a nurturer at the same time to your children while also dealing with every other aspect of the day, such as work, such as having to navigate different social circles, such as having to understand that your time horizon has changed. Another thing I talk about is creating and organizing a schedule system because at one time you were 50% of a situation. Now you are 100% of that situation. And that means that you need to learn how to navigate your daily schedule along with the daily schedule of your child or children, as well as realizing that there were things that occur with your spouse that don't stop. She may have been in a volunteer situation. She may have been doing things. You now have to figure out how you're going to marry into that. The next thing I talked about when it comes to marrying into that is to learning how to integrate your former spouse's experiences into your own. This way, the mourning process shifts over time. Immediately, first year or so, you're going to be going through those incredible ups and downs, the crying, the frustration, the the special days that are going to be a challenge. But over time, you will learn how to mourn differently. You will never stop mourning. Some people can put it to the back burner, but some people can be stuck. I mean, there is actually a syndrome where people stay stuck in their grief. And it's actually in the medical journal as an illness now. It's described as a situation where a person goes through grief and they do not come out of it. They're always in mourning. And they're always in that type of mourning where they wake up, it's miserable. They go through the day. Everything is a reminder of what has happened. And it's a challenge for them. What I say is that don't negate the mourning period. Just find a way to turn the mourning into an honoring of the person you lost. When you do that, you appreciate the time that you spent with that person. You're no longer upset over what you lost. You're saying, we had a great life together. We were awesome together. But now I'm going to take the information that I acquired through our union and I'm going to move forward. And the last thing I talk about is patting yourself on the back, giving yourself congratulations for experiencing this journey. See, grief, unfortunately, is an aspect of growth. And you have to go through that experience in order for you to learn how to grow through that experience. And once you walk through it, you will realize, I've done that. See, that circumstance is now in the past. I've overcome it. My resilience has grown. I'm now increasing my self-esteem because I can tell myself I've done it. And there's evidence and proof that I've done it.
So, Jay, let me ask you a question then. What are some obstacles that people, either yourself or your clients, would face when they're trying to continue their life now as a single father or a father that is moving through the grief period alone or without their partner?
Good question. The reminders remind you, mind you, everyone knew you as a union, knew you as a couple. So now they're learning you as an individual, and you are learning how to walk through your journey as an individual. You're not losing your identity of your relationship, but you are shedding the old skin, becoming a 2.0 version of yourself. During that time, there are going to be many obstacles, things that used to be able to rely on your significant other for help, assist, and support. And now you have to either look for outside sources to offer you some support, or you're going to have to build your own wherewithal in order to address having support. Because sometimes the only support you're going to have is yourself. And of course, your children, because they're sharing an experience. So I tell a lot of my clients that understand your experience is giving you the opportunity to grow and to expand. You're going to become different. The people that used to know you as the person you were are now getting an opportunity to experience you as this 2.0 version of yourself. But during that 2.0 evolution, you're going to have some stumbles, you're going to have some falls, you're going to shift, you're going to look at yourself and say, I don't think I can do this because it is hard. It's a challenge. But that's when I say, look back at what you have already accomplished. Because when you do look back and you see the things you've already accomplished, you now can tell yourself, I can move forward, I can figure this out. I've done that before. There was an area where I did not understand, but I dealt with it. There's going to be a point of misunderstanding, but I'm going to figure out how to navigate through it.
I remember when I went through a loss of my grandmother, and that was probably the more difficult of the few that I had. I, as a person, knew that other people were looking towards me for strength and understanding while I was still trying to do the same for myself. So you're being pulled in so many different ways. And I wonder then how many of your clients, or maybe you went through this, struggle with being there for themselves instead of trying to be there for everyone else. What are your thoughts?
That is one of the biggest things you have to deal with because everyone is expecting you to fall down, but then there are also others who are facing experiences related. And for them, they're falling down. They need your support in order to maintain. I tell my clients, Let me give you a personal story. I remember when I initially started going through my experience, and my wife's mother, her and I, we were pretty cool until my wife died. And then when my wife died, things became a challenge. But I had to get past that and realize that she had a connection with my wife where she needs extra support. This was a biological connection that she had with my wife. So I needed to raise my emotional intelligence and get past the fact that she had some issues with me. And I had to find a way to communicate with her so that she can understand that I'm not her enemy. I her and I, we've both gone through a challenging situation. It's different because I did not have a biological connection to my wife. I had a neurological connection to my wife. The difference is stark because every time we talked, it was always about, how when she was young, I did this. When she was young, I did that, you know, and then I can say when we were young, because, her and I, we have been together 26 years. But the difference is young to my mother-in-law was from birth young. Young to me, we were 18, so we had we had that false sense of adulthood at that age where my mother-in-law helped my wife walk through points of life to get to adulthood. So having to understand that is a challenge. But what I say to people is understand everybody is learning you differently. And at the same time, they're going through their experiences because they knew your spouse on a level different than you did. Some people were close, they may have been family, siblings. Some people may have been work colleagues. Some people may have been best friends since the third grade. Everyone's relationship is different. And then when they met you, they built a relationship based off of the relationship that they already had. So now what you have to do is speak with them on this new level. The one level that says, we all miss her. But what we need to do is figure out how we'll figure out how to get through this. Some people will disconnect with you, and that's fine because you're on your personal journey, they're on theirs. And understand that every connection is not meant to stay. Some connections are meant to be for that particular season or time period. So, to kind of answer your question more directly, it comes down to the fact that you have to realize that everyone's relationship was different and that you need to navigate each relationship accordingly. You can't put a blanket over it. and say that everybody deals with things this way because it's not the case.
So for the men who are struggling with that and to separate from seeing themselves in that union as two people, and now that they're one, what kind of help do you think is maybe missing from assisting them to overcome that type of hurdle?
That's easy. The emotional challenges. See, the emotions are feelings, inner feelings that we have in relation to our situation. As a matter of fact, it's interesting. Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor, she wrote a book called The Grieving Brain. And she made this very interesting comparison. She compared people being in grief to walking in the dark and stumbling over your coffee table. But then she says, imagine walking in the dark and that coffee table is not there. When you turn the lights on, you realize somebody stole your coffee table. That is what it feels like when you lose someone, because you've already known everything about that person, but now they're absent. As a matter of fact, it's even crazier. A study was done out of China. Xingling Zhu actually did this study, and the study compared love, the initial throes of love, to aspects of being addicted to drugs. Now, what is interesting about this is that even though they talked about the initial aspects of love, the long-term effects of staying in love over time, imagine this. It's incredibly hard to quit cocaine. It's it's you need help to quit heroin. Imagine if a person leaves, you are now immediately going through withdrawal. Immediately. And when that happens, you have to learn how to navigate. That's why, again, I compared it to the coffee table scenario. I mean, you're losing something and you're going through all these challenging experiences. So again, the emotional aspect is incredible because you can go to therapists, you can go to doctors, and they're going to give you an academic viewpoint, which is absolutely valid. But everyone has a unique experience. Everybody's relationship, you may have met your significant other in the south of France. You may have met them in college. You, you guys could have grown up together on the same block. Everyone's connection is different. And that means those emotions are going to be different. The approaches, you can have an academic approach to this, but each academic approach has to be complemented with realities of experience. For instance, those experiences have to be looked at when someone's talking to a therapist. When you're having a conversation with a professional, that therapist needs to say, how'd you meet? You know, how did you guys connect with each other? And once they understand that aspect, then they can look at different therapeutic strategies that may be able to help. Because there are some aspects that all grievers go through. And it's the hurt, it's the pain, it's the feeling of I'm never going to see that person again. And all those things can be actually addressed through therapy and things like that. They can be addressed. What can't be addressed is the particular emotional connection that you had with that person. Each person's emotional circumstance is different. And it also depends on the type of loss you've experienced. I mean, we're talking about, losing a spouse, but you just talked about losing your grandmother. That loss is absolutely different. I talked about the fact that my mother-in-law lost her child. Absolutely different experience. Each experience has to be navigated accordingly. And that means that there is no blanket approach to this.
So then, would it be my understanding is that if we're all grieving differently, depending on the type of loss that we had, then the people who are in our lives will impact us positively or negatively differently in their interaction with us as well. Would that be true?
That's absolutely true. Remember, each person has a relationship with your former person, maybe your spouse or you know, your girlfriend, grandmother, whoever it was. They have a different understanding. Again, some are neurological, some are biological. And depending on that relationship, that will be a hindrance or it will be a tightening. It depends on how you have created the connection with the other people who you've dealt with. Remember, think about this. Let's take a marriage, for instance. You are married to a person, and there were some people who they didn't necessarily like you when you were married to them. They tolerated you because, they cared about the person you were married to. But now that person's gone. All bets are off. The claws come out. It gets ugly. And mind you, that's compounded by hurt. So now the people that simply tolerated you have reason to show their teeth. And you are going through an experience where you have lost a significant person. And you don't want to believe that those people simply tolerated you. You want to believe they loved you. They acted like it, so you assume that they did. But then the truth comes out. What I explain to people is that every relationship is not meant to stay. Sometimes take the lessons of the time period that you had with the person. This way, this way, you're not upset when they are not there, or when they say things that are antithetical to your grieving process, or when you find out that they didn't really like you that much. When you discover these things, you have an opportunity to take the lessons from them and learn it. Because the other way is to simply be upset. And if you're upset, what happens is you make the mistake of fighting fire with fire. And when you fight fire with fire, you're only going to burn down everything. Nobody wins. They are stuck in their position, and you cannot move them. Even your logic will not move them. So I say to people, sometimes you have to use a little water. And using water means that when they're coming at you aggressively, for you to say, you know, maybe maybe there's some maybe there's some validity to it. Now, this is what you're going to say then. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's actual validity to it. It just means that you're agreeing to find a way to diffuse the challenging circumstance. And when you do that, what's interesting is it throws them off because they were looking for a fight. And when you're agreeing with them, or when you're saying, you know, that's something to think about. Well, now they don't have anything to fight you about. Internally, they're upset. So now you have the ability to say, I'm going to move on because that person has identified to me that they're not going to be helpful. They're not going to help me manage through my experience. And there's no reason for me to go back to ask them for help. Now, you take the lessons by saying, that's what I learned from this person. You know what? I'm not going to gravitate to a person like that again. I'm not going to, or I'm not going to be the type of person that they expect or that they knew me as before. A lot of people make the mistake of saying, I've always been this person. I'm not going to change. Well, if you decide not to change, guess what? Life changes. And if you decide to stay where you are, that doesn't mean that life stays. That just simply means that you're going to be stuck on the corner while life is moving around you. You have to find a way to become malleable. It doesn't mean become a 360 of yourself, become a totally different person. It means to elevate yourself. Put it this way. The iPhone has gone through about 16 iterations. We're on like iPhone 16 now. Well, but what's interesting is it still has elements of the first, second, third, fifth, sixth generation iPhone. So it doesn't mean that you have to totally change, and realize that you don't want to totally change for people that don't really care about you. Because when you do that, you're trying to accommodate people that when you make a change, they're going to make a change to find a way to piss you off. So find a way to gracefully bow out, find a way to say thank you for the time, and it's time for me to move on. Find your tribe of people. They can help you. People that can understand your language. People that can understand your experiences. People that can relate to your emotions. People who will be empathetic to you and will show compassion. It takes time. It takes you opening up. It takes you understanding. And it takes you agreeing to leave the old version of yourself behind if you have to.
So, Jay, let me ask you then as we close, I'm going to give you three wishes. These are three things that it's Aladdin's lamp. You can wish for these three things that you wish people knew. What are three things you wish people knew about themselves as you're going through their grief journey, and why?
The first one is realize that grief is growth. That's the first one. Realize that you have to go through the experiences of grief in order to grow. The second thing is realize that you have new skills that were created due to the challenges you've gone through. Whether you lost a spouse or a sibling or a grandparent, there were new things you learned. For instance, for me, when I'll tell you real simple, I could not boil water when, because my wife was an excellent cook. I had to learn how to become a cook, how to learn. And for me, it was beneficial, you know, but you pick up new skills. And the third thing I always explain is that you open up a doorway to discover a newness in you, something that was birthed from the challenge you experienced. So, A, like I said, realize the fact that you're growing through the grief that you experienced. The second thing is understand that you've acquired new skills. And the last thing is to realize that you have the opportunity to open your world up to new discoveries.